Buster Olney, thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits with Armin and Levac on 104.5 The Team every Thursday live at 5:15. The best of Buster today at 6 o'clock. And Buster Teixeira possibly done for the year. Nathan Eovaldi done for the regular season. Is this a worst-case scenario for the Yankees with their biggest bat and their most consistent pitcher both down?
Boy, it's not the worst-case scenario. I actually think that losing Tanaka would be a bigger deal. Because Eovaldi, who's been terrific for them this year and is going to, theoretically be a guy they're going to rely on going forward, in the postseason he wasn't going to be the guy who was going to start game one of the playoffs. And Tanaka could be that guy. Gregorius has become so important for their team on a daily basis because of his great defense at shortstop. But it's not good. They don't have a lot of depth in the rotation, and if there's any sort of a problem, with Tanaka, Pineda, they can't really make up for that, and also puts in a position where they have to rely on Sabathia. Now, because Bird, I think, is okay, I think that that they can weather the loss of Teixeira more easily than they can a starting pitcher at this point, especially when you're talking about within the framework, within the context of a team that's probably going to make the playoffs and have a one-game playoff and perhaps advance.
Our own Jim Leyritz kind of questioned Mark Teixeira not being able to come back quicker from this bone bruise. Historically, he points to Mark Teixeira has missed some time throughout his career. How much merit would you put into that?
He's definitely missed some time. There's no question about it. I mean, he's had lingering issues with his wrist and with other injuries. But I've never heard anyone within the Yankees organization say, "Look, I don't think he's healthy." In fact, Brian Cashman, their general manager, has told me that his bruise on his leg is not healing the way that they thought. They expected it would be better, and it just hasn't happened. And look, players are different. They have different bodies, and they heal at different rates. I covered Cal Ripken for 2 years, and you'd hear stories from that training staff of how he would be taken out by a runner on a Tuesday and have a huge black and blue bruise, and then the next day he would show up with nothing on his leg. It was like it was something out of the Bible. And on the other hand, I think Teixeira in recent years, he's gotten older. It's definitely taken him time to come back from injuries.
ESPN's Buster Olney with Armin and Levac, thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits. How will Greg Bird hold up for a Band-Aid while Texas out?
Boy, it's an open question, and no one's going to know the answer to it. There certainly have been indications that opposing teams are finding holes in his swing. But so long as every once in a while he pitches in with with an extra base hit, with a home run, especially in Yankee Stadium, that's okay. And I actually think the most important thing for him is to play really good defense, because that, to me, is the underrated part of losing Teixeira. He's such a terrific first baseman, saving infielders from errors because he can dig the ball out of the dirt so well. And that, to me, is the most important question for Bird. Can he be remotely close to what Teixeira was defensively?
Buster Olney with Armin and Levac. Hey, you've been keeping a close eye on Dellin Betances and his pitch count and the way Girardi's been handling him. Didn't put him out there last night. He got a little chippy with the media after the game. You still feel like he's handling this poorly?
Well, in general, I thought this year that they've overused Betances and Andrew Miller, so I couldn't possibly, with a straight face, say, "Oh yeah, and they should have used him on Wednesday night." No, I actually thought that Joe handled it well because, look, Dellin Betances threw 30 pitches on Sunday, and then he came back and threw 27 more pitches on Monday, 57 pitches in 2 days. And at that point, he'd racked up 1,166 for the season, the most of any reliever in the American League. Andrew Miller missed an entire month. He's already got 51 appearances. And Girardi is looking at a situation on Wednesday night in which he's got this huge series with the Blue Jays coming up, so much at stake. And the Yankees on Wednesday night, 4 games up in the wild card race, a game and a half behind the Blue Jays in the American League East. So it wasn't like Wednesday's game was make or break. Yeah, you'd like it, but you also, as he explained after the game, look, he's got to figure out a way to take care of these guys, and he's going to want them available in these big Toronto games. I thought the way Joe handled it was absolutely right on the mark on Wednesday and trying to get somebody else to get the outs.
Buster, the last 2 games that Joe has not used Andrew Miller and Dellin Betances, vice versa. The Yankees bullpen has lost the game for them late in the innings. Is the bullpen for the Yankees, we all the time talk about how deep they are, how talented they are. Are we overrating them? Are they maybe not as good as we say they are?
I don't think we're overrating them, because when you have two guys as dominant at the back end, that makes for a pretty good bullpen. And once you get to the postseason, assuming that these two guys aren't burned out by the time we get to October, Joe will have two guys capable on a given night of getting 6 to 9 outs, basically assume a lead in the 7th inning, and that's a tremendous advantage. I do think, and part of the cost I've thought all along, in how Joe has not relied on other guys in a way that he might have, is that you don't develop a third guy. In other words, like you had that game in Boston where, he got Betances up with a 7-run lead, in my opinion, because he got anxious. I mean, that to me is a classic situation where you bring in a guy like Adam Warren and say, look, you're one of the guys you're going to rely on in a close game going forward. And I think there would have been some value in that, doing that early in the season.
Speaking of Adam Warren, the team is now trying to stretch him out to be a starter again. How difficult is that? Starter, bullpen, back to being a starter?
Well, I've had pitchers tell me that it's hard, that there's a cost. And you remember the name Ramiro Mendoza, who was a reliever with the Yankees in the late 90s. They did that with him. He handled it well generally, but relievers have told me that you get tired, switching roles like that, because they really are two completely different roles. But let's face it, if what Warren Adam does for the rest of the year is all going to be viewed through the prism of the results. If he pitches well and they advance deep into October, everyone's going to say, boy, that worked out great. And if he flames out, people are going to ask the question, did they handle him the wrong way?
Buster, you told us at the beginning of the season that we should have lower expectations for CC Sabathia to begin with. What should our expectations for CC be now?
Boy, I think that if the Yankees get through an opposing lineup, if CC gets through an opposing lineup twice in a given game, then you should be feeling good about it. And I actually think that's what Girardi did on Wednesday when he got him out of the game and after 4 2/3 innings. And CC wasn't happy about it. And you know what? I thought in general CC had some of his best sequences of the year, in particular striking out Manny Machado with runners on base. But I think they're at the stage in the season where there's enough of a sense of urgency in that if CC can put them in a position where they have a chance to win through 2 times through the order, I think Girardi's going to be looking for the ripcord and breaking glass and going to the bullpen at that point. And I think what we saw last night was maybe a sign of what's to come with him.
ESPN's Buster Olney, thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits. Buster, the Blue Jays at Yankee Stadium, a pivotal 4-game series starts tonight. As you look at these two teams in the race in the AL East, what's the key for these two ball clubs, as they go head-to-head?
Well, the Yankees have to slow down the Toronto offense because it's the best in baseball now. It's the most complete team in baseball. With adding Troy Tulowitzki at shortstop, Ben Revere in left field, they made their defense a lot better. They have Marcus Stroman coming back during this series, and making his first start at 2015. They got David Price. And I think that's where potentially Toronto could separate themselves in the American League playoffs, is just by pounding people. And in particular, they have to figure out a way to deal with Josh Donaldson, who's probably the front runner to be the American League MVP. And it seems like so much of the damage that the Blue Jays have been able to do has come in the first and second inning. And, they've had a great track record since just before the trade deadline and just blowing people out and taking control of games early.
Yankees assistant general manager Billy Appler, now a candidate for multiple GM jobs. Assuming he gets a promotion elsewhere, how much of a blow is this? How much of an impact does he make in the Yankees front office?
Well, he's really important to the Yankees. I mean, Brian Cashman has always used him like a right-hand man. Billy's, in my estimation, times I dealt with him, I think he's a terrific executive. I think he's a great person. He's actually come very close to getting 2 other jobs in recent years. One, actually, the Angels almost hired him when they hired Jerry Dipoto a few years ago. And 2, last winter, he was in negotiations for the Padres job when they took a turn And it doesn't surprise me that the Angels have now gone back to him to the point that he is viewed as an overwhelming favorite to get that job. I do think the one thing that Brian Cashman's done well is he's developed a really good chain of command, and he's good at identifying, I think, front office talent. And Billy is going to, be seen as an example of that. And I think Brian will go and get somebody else who's really good at it.
Buster Olney, thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits. Here we go. New York Mets. Buster, you've been vocal about this week. What should the Mets do future-wise with Matt Harvey?
Well, here's the thing. We don't know exactly how many innings Harvey is going to throw the rest of the year. The Mets don't really know. They're trying to come up with a workable plan. And the bottom line is whatever they come up with, it's going to be imperfect because if he's going to throw 180 innings or 185 innings, as I said the other day on SportsCenter, it's like having a cake recipe but not enough flour. There's no getting around that. He's got 171 and two-thirds innings thrown. So if he throws 180 innings, if that's his limit that they wind up enforcing, it means he's got 8 1/3 innings left for the rest of September and October. If it's 185 innings, it's about 15 innings, and you can't really work with that, especially given the questions that will go along with, if you shut him down now and try to bring him back in the postseason, will he have some rust? Will he be okay? Is that really resting him? And, all the attendant questions that go along with it about, when's he going to be ready and the teammates being asked about it. And I think if he winds up only being available for 3 or 4 innings in a postseason game, to me, that's not worth it. I think the Mets should just go to Matt Harvey and say, look, we're not going to make you pitch when you don't want to pitch if you feel like you're not right physically. So what we're going to do is we're going to line you up and ask you, do you want to pitch that game? And if he says no, then the Mets can go, okay, next man up, and go down the line. That way it doesn't become a distraction. And if at some point Matt Harvey says, you know what, I feel fatigued, I'm going to shut it down, the Mets should go, no problem. We'll just we'll give somebody else your spot. And I do wonder if in the end, if they handle it that way, if the peer pressure would start to shift on to Matt enough that he might grudgingly say, you know what, I want the ball because this team has a chance to win.
We played the clip of you yesterday saying that the Mets in the offseason should trade Matt Harvey. Has he simply just worn out his welcome in New York?
Well, I think and that is if it all goes badly. Because let's face it, if the Mets don't win in the postseason and Matt Harvey plays this very reduced role, if he doesn't start or if he makes starts of 2 or 3 innings, there are going to be a lot of questions in that organization about, his future and does he share their future. And I think the reality is, too, from the Mets' perspective, they know that after 2018, Matt Harvey is not going to be part of the organization. He's represented by Scott Boras, who always takes his players into free agency. The Mets know he's not going to sign long-term. They also know that they would get tremendous value in return for him if they trade him now. And they've got other guys who can step up and be the leader of the staff, whether it's Jacob deGrom or Noah Syndergaard. And I think that it's basically a done deal that the Mets will at least discuss trading Harvey sometime in the next 2 winters, maybe not this winter. But I do think that if it turns out badly for the Mets at the end of this season, if Harvey winds up getting blamed at the end of the year, I think that could accelerate the timetable.
And you believe his value is very high, despite the fact he's a pain in the okay, because he's a pain in the butt.
Well, I don't think, and I'm just riffing here, a team like the Boston Red Sox, trying to win a World Series next year, knowing that Harvey probably would be able to throw 220 innings for them, I think they would live with that.
Okay.
And I think the Dodgers would live with it, and I think other contenders would live with it. I just wonder, and because we've seen down in Washington, after Strasburg was shut down, fairly or not, a lot of the conversation around players in baseball is, boy, Strasburg should have pushed through that. It gave up a chance to win. It changed the perception of Steven, and I think if it doesn't go well for the Mets down the stretch or in the postseason, and Harvey winds up being greatly reduced in his role, that you're going to have similar things with Matt.
Buster Olney, thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits. The Mets just swept the Nationals. What impressed you the most about them in the series?
Well, I love the fact that, and all athletes are like this. They look for ways to sort of do some mental gymnastics and to find a chip on their shoulder that they can use. And in a weird sort of way, this whole Harvey thing became something very useful to the players. We heard David Wright on Sunday saying, this is not a distraction. No one's talking about this. In fact, no one's even aware of it on social media. And I can tell you, I was in St. Louis over the weekend. I had players of the Pirates and Cardinals saying, hey, what's going on with Matt Harvey? What do you hear? Everyone's aware of it. The Mets players are certainly aware of it. But now it's become something that they're almost internally saying, you know what? We're not going to let that affect us. And it reminds me a few years ago, and I obviously do not mean to compare the issues, but when Melky Cabrera was suspended from the San Francisco Giants in 2012, it was like the players and the Giants said, we're not going to let that become an issue. We're going to win in spite of what Melky Cabrera did. And I think it was one of the reasons why they drove through the World Series. And I think that what we saw from the Mets in that series against the Nationals was a very motivated team with a huge chip on its shoulder about how much attention the Harvey thing is getting.
ESPN's Buster Olney, thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits. You should sign up to be an ESPN Insider today at ESPN.com, where I read a column that you wrote earlier today, Buster, about the NL MVP. Who should win the NL MVP as of now?
And it was spurred by David Wright's comments that, Cespedes, maybe he should be considered for MVP. His first 36 games with the Mets, 36 RBI, 14 home runs, a .312 batting average. I love David Wright being a great teammate, but I think the notion of Cespedes, the National League MVP, after 36 games is ridiculous. And if you want to pick a great player on a team that's going to be in the postseason, then you could pick Andrew McCutchen of the Pirates. You could pick Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs. But to me, and as I get older and you look at the ballot and you puzzle over it and you puzzle over it and puzzle over it, to me the whole thing of, well, you need to be on a winning team to be the MVP, that's ridiculous. And they should just simply pick the best player in the league, because Bryce Harper, without a doubt this year, has been the best player in the league, and it's really not that close. And to me, if I had a vote, and I don't, every year I would just say which guy has the best production among all players, in terms of it being difference-making to his particular team. Can you imagine the sinkhole the Nationals would be in if Bryce Harper wasn't so great this year?
Yeah. Buster Olney, thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits. Buster, did you get our All-Star Wine and Spirits gift basket?
I got my package.
What was in that thing?
I loved it. I think my wife definitely loved it even more than I did.
Did we send you some baseball MLB licensed wine? Is that what you got?
I got some baseball wine. I got some Mets. I got some Red Sox. I got some Yankees.
We meant to accidentally drop the Red Sox bottle. Sorry about that. Didn't mean for that to happen. Buster Olney joins us every week thanks to All-Star Wine and Spirits and Latham Farms, allstarwine.com. Buster, we'll do it again next week, man. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.